The atmosphere of the gas giant Typhon was a bruising kaleidoscope of violent violet and bruised orange, a swirling storm that could swallow entire moons without burping. Suspended above this chaotic, majestic violence floated the Thalri capital, the high spire of Ethelgard. It did not look like a station built by rivets and steel. It looked like it had been grown, a jagged, beautiful accumulation of living crystal that caught the light of the distant sun and shattered it into a million prism fractures. It was a cathedral of arrogance hovering over an abyss. Jace Morrow looked out the viewport of the diplomatic shuttle and felt the familiar churn of nausea that had nothing to do with zero gravity and everything to do with being human in a galaxy that considered his species akin to sentient mold. The shuttle was not allowed to approach the primary docking spires, which glittered with the traffic of sleek, organic Thalri cruisers. Instead, the automated traffic control beam seized Jace's transport and dragged it roughly toward the lower maintenance hangars. It was a subtle humiliation, the kind the Thalri excelled at. They did not shout their superiority. They simply structured the universe so that you had to walk through the service entrance. Jace adjusted the collar of his dress uniform. It was the best suit the Terran Coalition could afford to issue him. Synthetic wool that itched in the recycled air. He ran through the treaty points in his head for the 1,000th time. Energy exchange ratios, mining rights in the uninhabited belts, mutual non-aggression protocols. It was dry, boring work, but if he pulled it off, 3 human colonies would have power for the next 50 years. The shuttle clamped onto the docking ring with a metallic shutter. The airlock cycled, hissing as it equalized pressures. Jace grabbed his datapad, took a breath that he held for 4 seconds, and stepped out. The docking bay smelled of ozone and something sweet, like rotting orchids. It was vast, dim, and echoing. As Jace walked down the ramp, he saw the walls were not metal but a dark, chitinous material that pulsed faintly, as if the station itself had a heartbeat. And there, scrawled across a bulkhead in glowing photoluminescent paint, was a symbol he recognized. It was a slur in the trade tongue, a jagged glyph that meant bottom feeder. He kept walking. He was good at ignoring things. It was a survival trait for an engineer from the outer colonies. A droid glided toward him. It was a hovering teardrop of silver chrome, lacking a face, just a single blue optical sensor that widened as it scanned him. "Greetings. Entity Morrow," the droid said. Its voice was melodic and utterly devoid of warmth. "Greetings," Jace said, forcing a smile that felt tight on his face. "I am here to see her radiance. I believe I am on the schedule. You are processed," the droid replied. "However, due to the biohazard potential of your microbiome, your security detail must remain here in the decontamination zone. You will proceed alone." Jace paused. He tapped the comms unit in his ear. "Captain Vance, did you hear that?" The gruff voice of the shuttle captain crackled in his ear. "I heard it. Jace, I do not like it. We are supposed to be your honor guard." "I guess I am too dirty for the throne room," Jace said, trying to keep his tone light. "Sit tight, Cap. If I am not back in 2 hours, assume I bored them to death with spreadsheets." "Do not joke, kid," Vance said. "These tall ones make me nervous. Keep your head down." Jace followed the droid out of the hangar. The corridors of the palace were designed to make a human feel small. The ceilings vaulted 30 feet overhead, supported by ribs of translucent amber bone. Bioluminescent data streams flowed through the walls like veins, carrying the pulse of an empire that spanned 12 systems. Every few hundred feet, Jace passed a Thalri guard. They stood 7 feet tall, their armor grown directly over their skin, shifting color from deep indigo to warning red as he passed. Their eyes, wide and lacking whites, tracked him with predatory stillness. He reached the threshold of the great hall. The doors were massive slabs of pearl carved with scenes of Thalri conquests. The droid stopped. Communications are restricted beyond this point. Jace's earpiece hissed with static and then went dead. He was cut off. Just a man with a datapad and a suit that did not fit, standing before gods. The pearl doors groaned and swung inward. The sensory overload was instantaneous. The throne hall was not just a room. It was a biosphere. The air was thick and humid, smelling of spices that cost more than Jace's entire ship. The floor was a mosaic of polished obsidian, reflecting the thousands of luminaries floating near the ceiling. And the court was full. Hundreds of Thalri nobles stood in tiered galleries. They were tall, slender, and terrifyingly beautiful, their skin refracting the light like diamonds. They wore robes of spun nebula silk and living armor. As Jace walked down the long, lonely center aisle, a silence fell over the room. It was not a respectful silence. It was the silence of a predator watching a mouse scurry across the floor. At the far end, raised on a dais grown from living star coral, sat the queen. She was 10 feet tall, even seated. Her skin was the color of moonlight on snow. Her eyes were burning coals of sapphire. A crown of bioluminescent nerves flickered above her head like a halo of blue fire. She looked bored. Jace stopped at the designated marker, a circle of red inlaid in the black floor. He bowed, low and awkward. "Your Radiance," he said. His voice echoed too loudly in the vast space. "I bring greetings from the Terran Coalition. We are honored by your invitation to discuss the energy transfer protocols." He held up the data crystal. It looked pathetic in his hand, a tiny shard of human technology against this backdrop of biological supremacy. The queen did not speak. She leaned her chin on a hand that ended in long, elegant talons. She waved a finger, and a platform floated down to take the crystal from Jace. She did not even look at it. "Proceed," a courtier boomed from the side. Jace cleared his throat. He launched into his rehearsed speech. He talked about fusion output. He talked about trade routes. He tried to inject a little warmth, a little charisma, but it was like performing stand-up comedy at a funeral. The nobles whispered to one another, their voices like rustling dry leaves. He caught snippets of their speech. "Look at its skin. So porous. How does it breathe with such small lungs? The little human thinks it is speaking." Jace soldiered on, sweating. He reached the end of his summary. "In conclusion, this treaty benefits both our peoples, ensuring stability for the sector." He waited. The queen looked at him properly for the first time. Her expression was one of mild amusement, the way a scientist looks at a bacteria that has unexpectedly changed color. "Stability," the queen said. Her voice was like a cello bowed by a glacier, deep and resonating in Jace's chest. "You speak of trade, little engineer. You speak of power, but you do not understand what binds the universe together." Jace blinked. "I am surely willing to learn. Your Radiance. We do not sign papers," the queen said. "We bind blood." She clapped her hands. Once, sharp as a whip crack, from the shadows of the balcony a sound erupted. It was not brass or woodwind. It was the cry of living creatures, genetic trumpets that screamed a harmonious, terrifying fanfare. The sound vibrated in Jace's teeth. The massive doors behind the throne split open. "Behold," the queen announced, "the seal of the covenant." A figure walked into the light. She was Thalri, but she was smaller than the others, perhaps only 6.5 feet tall. She moved with a fluidity that made Jace's eyes water. She wore ceremonial armor of white enamel and gold, fitted close to her body, and layers of translucent veils that floated around her as if she were underwater. She was breathtaking, and she looked terrified. Jace watched as she descended the steps of the dais. Her skin was a soft, pale violet. Her eyes were wide, darting left and right, burning with a mixture of shame and fury. The queen stood up. Her shadow fell long over Jace. "To show our goodwill," the queen proclaimed, her voice booming to the rafters, "I bestow upon the human envoy a gift of immeasurable value. I give you my daughter, Lyra." The court erupted. The whispers turned into a roar of scandalized shock. "He is a solid. A princess given to a soft skin?" Jace stood frozen. His brain tried to parse the sentence. Gift, daughter. Lyra reached the bottom of the steps. She stood directly in front of Jace, up close. He could see the tremors in her hands. He could see the intricate, glowing circuitry of a collar-like implant embedded in the hollow of her throat. It pulsed with a frantic, angry red light. Jace found his voice. It was an octave higher than usual. "Your Radiance, I think there is a mistranslation. Humans do not trade people. We do not do that." The queen ignored him. Lyra looked down at Jace. Her eyes locked onto his. There was no love there. There was desperation. She took a step closer, invading his personal space, towering over him by half a foot. She spoke in human standard, the words clumsy and thick on her tongue, as if she had memorized them phonetically. "The queen gifted me to you, human. Mate with me or I die." The words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Jace stared at her. "Excuse me?" "Mate with me," Lyra repeated, her voice shaking with a suppressed sob. "Or I die." Before Jace could retreat, 3 medical drones descended from the ceiling like silver hawks. They surrounded him. He tried to duck, but a containment field locked his limbs in place. "What is this?" Jace shouted. "Get off me!" "Diplomatic immunity enhancements," the queen said smoothly. "To ensure you survive the joining." A drone struck Jace's neck. He felt a cold sting, followed by liquid fire rushing through his veins. He gasped, his knees buckling. At the same moment, the collar at Lyra's throat flared blindingly bright. Jace felt it. It was not a sound. It was a physical slam in the center of his mind. He felt a sudden, terrifying awareness of the woman standing in front of him. He could feel the rapid hammering of her heart as if it were beating inside his own ribs. He could feel her fear, cold and sharp. The drones released him. Jace stumbled, catching himself. He looked at Lyra. He didn't just see her anymore. He felt her location in the room like a gravitational pull. He spun toward the queen, anger overriding his fear. "You injected me? You cannot just drug a diplomat and hand him a person. This is insane. In my culture, we usually buy a girl dinner and ask for consent before we start talking about mating." He meant it as a protest, but the sheer absurdity of the situation turned it into a jagged joke. The court hissed. A few nobles laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Consent is for equals," the queen said, sitting back down. "And dinner is for after the deed. The bond is set. Engineer. The biocode in Lyra's implant is keyed to your genetic signature now. It requires a biological feedback loop to stabilize. If the bond is not consummated and maintained, the implant will interpret her rejection as a failure of duty. It will release a neurotoxin. She will die in agony." Jace looked back at Lyra. She was staring at the floor, her fists clenched at her sides. "Is that true?" Jace asked her. Lyra looked up. Her eyes were wet. "It is the law of the mother. I must bond, or I end." Jace ran a hand through his hair. "This is not a treaty. This is a hostage situation with wedding bells." The queen smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly too sharp. "It is an alliance. Do not disappoint me, human." The air in the room suddenly changed. The pressure dropped. Jace's new enhanced senses, the ones the drones had just forced upon him, prickled. He felt a spike of alarm that was not his own. It was Lyra's. "Get down," she whispered. "What?" Boom! The world turned white. The massive stained glass window behind the throne shattered inward. A shockwave of heat and sound lifted Jace off his feet and threw him backward onto the obsidian floor. Debris rained down. Shards of crystal the size of spears slammed into the ground. The court screamed, a high, alien shrieking. Jace shook his head, ears ringing. He looked up. Through the broken window, sleek black attack ships were visible against the storm clouds. They were firing pulse cannons into the hall. Beams of red energy scorched the walls. "Assassins!" a guard roared. "Protect the queen!" The room descended into chaos. The nobles scrambled, trampling over one another. The royal guard formed a living wall around the dais. But three of the black-clad figures dropping from the ceiling on gravity lines were not aiming for the queen. They were aiming for Jace. "The human!" one of them shouted in the Thalri tongue. "Kill the parasite!" Jace scrambled backward, trying to find purchase on the slick floor. He had a pen and a datapad. He was going to die. Then a blur of white and gold interposed itself between him and the laser fire. Lyra moved faster than Jace's eyes could track. She did not move like a princess. She moved like a thresher. She caught a falling debris shard in one hand and hurled it. It took the lead assassin in the throat. She spun, her ceremonial veils whipping around her like smoke. She grabbed Jace by the collar of his suit and hauled him up. "Move!" she commanded. Jace stumbled after her. The connection between them flared hot. He realized with a jolt that he could anticipate her movements. He knew she was going to turn left before she turned. He knew she was checking the rear. They sprinted toward a side archway. A bolt of plasma scorched the air inches from Jace's ear. "Why are they shooting at me?" Jace yelled. "I just got here." "They blame you for the breach," Lyra shouted back. She kicked a door release, and a membrane wall dissolved. She shoved him through. They were in a bio-corridor, a pulsing tunnel of muscle-like tissue. "We need to get to the hangars," Lyra said. She was breathing hard, but she wasn't winded. Her eyes were dilated, scanning the environment. "My ship is locked down," Jace said, "and I have no weapon." "You are the weapon," Lyra said, grabbing his hand. "Or the key to one. If you die, the implant fails." "I die. So you do not get to die today, human." She pulled him, and they ran. The palace was waking up. Alarms wailed, a sound like a giant beast in pain. The floor undulated beneath their feet. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Two palace guards blocked the path, their energy pikes leveled. "Halt!" the guard barked. "Surrender the human!" Lyra did not hesitate. She dropped Jace's hand and launched herself forward. She slid on her knees, going under the first pike, and drove her shoulder into the guard's solar plexus. The guard, 7 feet of armored muscle, folded. The second guard swung his weapon. Jace, acting on pure instinct driven by the bond, shouted, "Right!" Lyra didn't question it. She ducked right. The pike slammed into the wall where her head had been. She swept the guard's legs and delivered a precise, brutal kick to the helmet. Both guards were down. Lyra stood up, adjusting her armor. She looked at Jace. There was a flicker of surprise in her eyes. "You saw him?" she said. "I felt him," Jace corrected, rubbing his chest. "This bond thing, it is loud. We must move," Lyra said. They reached the secondary hangar bay. It was chaos inside. Drones were buzzing and smoke filled the upper rafters. Jace spotted his shuttle. It was clamped down, but the docking arm looked damaged from the initial blast. "There," Jace pointed. "The diplomat." They sprinted across the deck. A stray shot from the dogfight outside punched a hole in the hangar roof, sucking air out with a scream. The wind roared, pulling at them. Lyra practically threw Jace into the airlock of his shuttle. She scrambled in behind him and slammed the cycle button. "Get us out of here," Lyra yelled. "I am an engineer, not a combat pilot," Jace shouted, vaulting into the pilot's seat. He frantically powered up the console. The ship hummed to life. The clamps released with a grinding screech. Lyra squeezed into the co-pilot seat. It was built for a human, so she was cramped, her knees pressing against the dashboard, her shoulder pressed against Jace's. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through him that had nothing to do with the ship's wiring. It was dizzying. "Can you fly this?" Lyra asked, her hands hovering over the controls. "I can fly anything with an engine," Jace muttered, "but I do not know the codes for the blast doors." Lyra reached over, her fingers flew across his keypad. She punched in a sequence. "Override authorized," the ship's computer chirped. "How did you know that?" Jace asked. "I grew up here," Lyra said grimly. "I know every cage's lock." The blast doors began to open. Jace slammed the throttle forward. The shuttle shot out of the hangar like a cork from a bottle. They were instantly in the middle of a war zone. The sky was full of fire. Thalri interceptors were engaging the black assassin ships. Jace yanked the stick hard to the left, dodging a piece of falling wreckage. Warning lights screamed on the dashboard. "Shields are down to 40%, Jace yelled. Lyra grabbed the secondary stick. "Let me," she said. "No, I got it. You are too slow." Lyra snarled. She didn't wait for permission. She grabbed the controls. Jace felt the shift in the ship's movement instantly. It ceased to be a mechanical object and became a living thing. Lyra flew with a feral, terrifying joy. She spun the shuttle on its axis, threading the needle between two exploding frigates. The G-force slammed Jace back into his seat. He watched her profile. Her teeth were bared in a grin that was not happy. It was the adrenaline grin of a creature finally allowed to run. "Coordinate for the jump point," Lyra shouted. Jace's fingers flew across the nav computer, calculating hyperspace trajectory. "We need clear space. Get us above the atmosphere." Lyra pulled up. The shuttle groaned, metal stressing as they climbed vertically. The storm clouds whipped past, gray and violent, and then suddenly they broke through. The stars hung above them, cold and indifferent. "Punch it," Lyra yelled. Jace hit the engage button. The stars stretched into lines of light. The roar of the engines faded into the smooth, silent hum of hyperspace. They were safe. Jace slumped in his seat, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He took a long, shaky breath. He turned to look at Lyra. She was staring straight ahead, her hands still gripping the controls so hard her knuckles were white. The feral energy was fading, replaced by a sudden, crushing exhaustion. The glow of her implant had dimmed to a steady, rhythmic pulse. Jace unbuckled his harness. He spun his chair to face her. "Okay," he said. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him cold and angry. "We are alive. Now explain." Lyra blinked slowly. She turned her head. "Explain what? Human? Do not call me human. My name is Jace. And explain this." He pointed to his own neck, where the injection site still throbbed. "Explain why you told me to mate with you or you would die. Because back there, you did not look like a dying damsel. You looked like a soldier." Lyra looked down at her hands. She slowly released the control stick. "I was bred to be both," she said quietly. "A weapon for the enemies of the state, a vessel for the alliances of the crown." She looked up at him, and the tragic conviction in her eyes stopped Jace cold. "Since I was a child, Jace, I was told my blood is not my own. It belongs to the Empire, this implant." She touched the collar at her throat. It monitors my biology. It monitors the bond. The Queen spoke the truth. If I do not complete the mating bond, if I do not merge my biorhythms with yours in the way the code demands, the system will destabilize. It will stop my heart. Jace stared at her. He wanted to call it a lie. He wanted to call it manipulation. But the bond in his head hummed with her sincerity. She believed it. She believed it with every fiber of her being. "So that is it?" Jace asked, his voice low. "You just accept it? You are going to force yourself on me? Or force me to force myself on you? To stay alive?" Lyra flinched. It was a small movement, but Jace saw it. "I wish to live," she whispered. "Is that a crime?" Jace stood up. He paced the small confines of the cockpit. He felt trapped. Trapped by the ship, trapped by the galaxy, trapped by the alien woman looking at him with desperate expectation. He stopped and looked at her. "No," he said. "It is not a crime to want to live. But this, buying and selling people, rigging their bodies to explode if they do not have sex, that is evil. That is sick." He crouched down so he was eye level with her. "I am an engineer. Lyra, I fix things. I fix broken engines. I fix bad wiring." He pointed a finger at her implant. "I am going to fix that. I am going to find a way to get that code out of your head. I will turn this ship around. I will fly to the ends of the galaxy. I will find the smartest hackers in the Rim. I will help you find a way not to die." Lyra watched him, her breath hitching. But Jace continued, his voice hard and absolute. "I am not going to touch you. Not like that. Not because a queen ordered it, and not because a computer chip is holding a gun to your head." Lyra's eyes widened. She pulled back slightly. "You reject me?" "I am not rejecting you," Jace said, frustrated. "I am respecting you. There is a difference. I will not treat you like property until you can choose freely, without that thing threatening to kill you. Nothing happens. Do you understand?" Lyra stared at him. She heard his words, but they scrambled in her mind. He was refusing the bond. That meant death. But he was also offering to save her. He was refusing to own her, which was an insult to her value. But he was claiming she had value outside of being owned. It was a paradox. It was terrifying. It was the first time in her life someone had looked at her and seen a person, not a currency. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the cold seep into her armor. "If you do not bond, the pain will start soon," she said softly. "Then we better fly fast," Jace said. He spun his chair back around and began typing coordinates for the nearest neutral station. Lyra watched the back of his head. The bond between them was a thin, fragile thread, vibrating with his stubborn determination and her own confusing storm of fear and wonder. "We go to the second chance," Jace muttered. "That is my ship. My real ship." Lyra rested her head against the cool glass of the viewport. The stars blurred. She was alive. She was unbonded. She was flying into the dark with a human who made bad jokes and refused to take what was given to him. She did not know if she would survive the week. But for the first time in 100 years of Thalree history, a princess had left the spire without a chaperone. "The Queen gifted me to you," she whispered to the reflection in the glass. But perhaps, she thought, the human was the one who had been gifted. She closed her eyes and let the hum of the ship carry them into the void. The diplomatic shuttle limped into the docking cradle of the second chance like a wounded bird seeking its nest. The transition from the Thalree capital to Jace's personal freighter was jarring enough to give anyone sensory whiplash. Gone were the living crystal spires and the air that smelled of expensive spices. In their place was the smell of recycled air filters, ozone, and stale coffee. The second chance was a modified hauler, shaped like a brick that had been dropped repeatedly. Inside, the corridors were narrow and lined with conduits that Jace had patched with sealant foam and optimism. Jace keyed the airlock cycle. "Welcome to the mansion," he muttered, rubbing the sore spot on his neck where the drone had injected him. "Watch your step. The gravity plating in the foyer is a little twitchy." Lyra stepped onto the deck plates. She moved with the silent, predatory grace of a panther entering a new territory, her golden eyes darting to every shadow, every blinking light. She looked absurdly out of place. Her ceremonial armor, white enamel and gold, shone like a beacon against the scuffed gray bulkheads. Her translucent veils caught on a protruding bolt. She ripped the fabric free without looking at it. "Is this a prison barge?" Lyra asked, her voice echoing in the cramped space. "It is home," Jace corrected. "And it is paid for." "Mostly." Lyra did not look impressed. She stalked down the hallway, Jace trailing behind her like a nervous tour guide. She stopped abruptly in front of a wall-mounted fire extinguisher. She leaned in, sniffing it. "Do not touch that," Jace said. "It is for fires." "It smells of chemicals," Lyra observed. "Is it a weapon?" "In a way," Jace said. "If you hit someone hard enough with it." They reached the mess hall, which doubled as the crew lounge. It was a clutter of mismatched chairs, a table scarred by years of card games, and a kitchenette that hummed with a worrisome rattle. Lyra froze. She fixed her gaze on the microwave oven. The timer light was blinking red. "It is arming," Lyra hissed, dropping into a combat crouch. Her hand went to the empty space at her hip where a blade should have been. "It is not a bomb," Jace sighed, walking past her to tap the machine. "It is for heating burritos. Stand down, princess." Lyra straightened slowly, but she did not relax. She moved to the counter, eyeing a coffee machine that hissed steam. She poked it with one clawed finger, then recoiled when it gurgled. "Hostile fluid dynamics," she noted. Jace rubbed his face. "It is coffee. It keeps humans awake." He watched her move to the ragged sofa in the corner. Sitting on it was a plush toy, a round, cartoonish bear with wide eyes, belonging to the mechanic's niece who visited sometimes. Lyra stared at it. She reached out, poked its soft belly, and when it made a squeaking sound, she leaped back 3 feet, her eyes wide with horror. "It is alive!" she shouted. "It mocks me." Jace failed to suppress a laugh. "It is a toy. Lyra, it is stuffed with cotton. It cannot hurt you." Lyra narrowed her eyes at the bear. "It has the eyes of a deceiver." Before Jace could explain the concept of teddy bears, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Captain on deck," a synthetic voice drawled. That was Arik, the ship's AI core. "And Jace, my sensors indicate you have brought a biological anomaly on board, specifically a Thalri female with a pulse rate of 120 and enough combat cybernetics to dismantle this ship from the inside. Should I vent the airlock?" "Do not vent the airlock." "Arik," Jace shouted at the ceiling. "She is a guest." "A guest," another voice said from the doorway. Jace turned to see his crew. Kale, his mechanic, stood wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He was a bear of a man, wide as a doorframe, with a beard that could hide a wrench. Beside him was Riza, the medic, leaning against the frame with her arms crossed and a skeptical eyebrow raised. "You went to negotiate an energy treaty," Riza said, looking Lyra up and down. "And you came back with a Thalri princess in full warplate." "Negotiations were complicated," Jace said weakly. "I see that." Kale grunted. He looked at Lyra, who was staring at him with unblinking intensity. "Is she going to kill us?" "Not immediately," Jace said. Everyone. This is Lyra, her radiance, the daughter of the queen, and so on. Lyra, this is Kale and Riza. Lyra straightened. She looked at the crew members, assessing them as threats. The big one is slow, she said calmly. The small female has hidden knives. I smell the oil on them. Riza blinked, then smirked. I like her. She pays attention. So, Jace, are you going to explain why you brought home a girlfriend from a war empire? Or should we just guess? She is not my girlfriend, Jace said quickly. The air in the room shifted. Lyra stepped forward, the glowing collar at her throat pulsing a soft blue. He speaks the truth, Lyra said. Her voice was flat, carrying that terrifying conviction Jace was beginning to dread. I am not his friend. I am his gift. Riza and Kale exchanged a look. His gift? Kale asked. We must mate, Lyra continued, looking directly at Kale as if explaining simple arithmetic to a child. The queen has commanded it. If I do not mate with the human Jace, my biology will collapse. I will die. Therefore, we will mate. Silence descended on the mess hall. It was thick and heavy. The only sound was the coffee machine gurgling in the background. Kale choked on his own spit. He started coughing, hacking loudly into his rag. Riza's jaw dropped. She looked from Lyra to Jace, her eyes wide with unholy glee. Excuse me? Riza managed to say. Did she just say mate or die? Jace buried his face in his hands. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him into the cargo hold. That is not how it sounds, he groaned. It sounds exactly like that. Riza laughed. Oh, this is rich. You go to a diplomatic summit and come back with a mandatory wife? It is not a marriage, Jace insisted, his face burning. It is a biological hostage situation? Lyra looked confused by their reaction. Why do you laugh? This is a matter of life and death. The bond must be sealed. Riza walked over to Jace, patting him on the shoulder. Well, Captain, you always said you wanted a relationship that was serious. Death threats seem pretty serious to me. I hate you all, Jace muttered. 2 hours later. The laughter had died down, replaced by the humming of medical scanners. They were in the infirmary, a small, sterile room that smelled of antiseptic and lemon cleaner. Lyra sat on the bio bed, her armor removed to reveal a bodysuit of dark, flexible mesh. Jace sat on a stool nearby, his shirt collar pulled down so Riza could scan the injection site on his neck. Riza ran a handheld scanner over Lyra's throat implant. She frowned, looking at the holographic readout hovering in the air. This is not standard tech, Riza murmured. She tapped the screen, rotating the 3D model of the device. It is woven directly into her nervous system. Nanotech filaments go all the way down to the vagus nerve in the heart. Can you remove it? Jace asked. He was leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, watching the readout with an engineer's intensity. Riza shook her head. Not without killing her. It is rigged with a tamper switch. If I try to cut the signal, it floods her system with a neurotoxin. Instant cardiac arrest. Lyra sat perfectly still, her chin raised. The Queen does not make flaws, she said quietly. The bond is absolute. Riza looked at Jace. She lowered the scanner. But here is the strange part, the death trigger. It is not just a simple timer. It is monitoring hormone levels, oxytocin, dopamine, adrenaline. It is looking for a specific chemical cocktail that matches, well, intimacy, trust. So if we do not do it. She dies? Jace asked, unable to say the words. Riza hesitated. Maybe. But look at this code variance here. She pointed to a jagged red line on the graph. It looks like a receiver. It is waiting for a signal confirmation. It implies that the lethal trigger might not be automatic. It might be triggered remotely if the conditions are not met. Jace frowned. You mean someone has to push the button? Riza shrugged. Or the button pushes itself based on data it sends back to the spire. But it is not just biology. Jace, it is surveillance. Lyra looked at the screen. She did not understand the data, but she understood the tone. You say the Queen lied? Lyra asked. I am saying the Queen likes insurance, Riza said gently. Jace stood up. He walked to the small viewport, looking out at the stars. The idea that Lyra was walking around with a bomb in her neck, a bomb keyed to his own affections, made him feel sick and angry. We need to know more, Jace said. Riza, keep analyzing that data. Kale, get the engines prepped for a long burn. We are not staying here. Where are we going? Riza asked. To find someone who can hack a queen, Jace said. Later that night, the ship was quiet. The crew had retreated to their bunks. Jace was in the engine room, checking the magnetic constrictors on the drive core. The rhythmic thrum of the engine was soothing, a mechanical heartbeat he understood. He sensed her before he heard her. The bond in his mind pricked with a sudden awareness, a scent of ozone and anxiety. He turned. Lyra was standing in the doorway. She had shed the mesh bodysuit and was wearing a spare mechanic's jumpsuit Kale had found for her. It was 3 sizes too big, rolled up at the sleeves and ankles, making her look small and vulnerable in a way the armor never had. Jace, she said. Hey, Jace said, wiping his hands on a rag. You should sleep. It has been a long day. I cannot sleep, Lyra said. She stepped into the room. The blue light of the drive core cast long shadows across her face. I feel the countdown. Human. In my blood. It is Jace, he reminded her gently. And Riza said we have time. We are going to figure this out. Lyra shook her head. She moved closer, invading his personal space. The heat radiating from her was palpable. You do not understand, she said. You think this is a puzzle to be solved, a broken wire. But it is what I am. She stopped inches from him. He could smell the soap she had used in the shower, a cheap floral scent that seemed alien on her. I was raised in the spire, she whispered. From the moment I could walk, I was taught that my body is currency. I was taught that affection is a transaction. If I smiled at the tutors, I received food. If I fought well, I received praise. If I obeyed, I was allowed to live. She looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I have never been given anything for free, Jace, and I have never given myself for free. I am a tool of statecraft. That is my purpose. Jace felt a pang of sorrow so sharp it almost knocked the wind out of him. He realized then the depth of the damage. It wasn't just the implant, it was the indoctrination. Lyra, he said softly, you are not a tool. You are a person. She reached out, her hand trembling, and placed it on his chest. Her palm was hot through his shirt. Then use me, she pleaded. Her voice cracked. Use me, Jace. End the risk. We can complete the mating here. Now. It will satisfy the code. I will not die. And you will have what you were promised. She pressed her body against his. He felt the soft curves of her beneath the rough fabric of the jumpsuit. He felt her heart racing against his own. And God help him, he felt the attraction. It roared through him, amplified by the bond, a primal demand to claim, to protect, to join. His hands came up to her waist instinctively. She let out a shaky breath, tilting her head back, offering her throat where the implant pulsed. It would be so easy. It would save her life. It was what she wanted. No. Jace pulled back. He gripped her shoulders and gently, firmly pushed her away. He saw the look on her face instantly. It was not relief. It was devastation. She stumbled back, her eyes wide with shock. Her hand went to her mouth. "You do not want me," she whispered. Jace shook his head frantically. "No. Lyra, that is not it. You are beautiful. You are incredible. But I am not going to do this out of fear. And I am certainly not going to do it because you think it is the only way to pay for your life." Lyra wrapped her arms around her stomach, hunching over as if he had struck her. "I am broken," she said, her voice hollow. "I have no value to you. If I am not a mate, what am I? I am nothing." She backed away, stumbling over a conduit. "Lyra, wait!" Jace stepped forward. "Do not touch me!" she shouted. The raw anguish in her voice stopped him cold. "You reject the gift. You leave me to die because I am not enough." She turned and fled. Jace stood in the engine room, the thrum of the drive core mocking him. He slammed his fist against the bulkhead, the pain grounding him. He had done the right thing. He knew he had. So why did it feel like he had just broken something precious? The next morning, the mood on the second chance was grim. Lyra did not come out of her cabin. Jace sat on the bridge, staring at the news feed scrolling across the main screen. It was bad. The Thalry Queen had released a formal statement. She stood on her balcony, looking every inch the grieving mother. "The humans have betrayed our trust," the Queen intoned, wiping a delicate tear from her cheek. "Their envoy has abducted my daughter. He has stolen the symbol of our alliance. If she is not returned, we will consider this an act of war." The feed cut to images of protests on human colonies. People were burning Thalry flags. On the other side, Thalry warships were gathering at the border. "They are spinning it," Jace muttered. "They are using us to start a war." "Arik, get me Admiral Vance on the secure line," Jace ordered. The screen flickered, and the face of a gray-haired human admiral appeared. He looked tired. "Morrow," the admiral said, "you have caused quite a stir." "Sir," Jace said, "I did not abduct her. She is a refugee. They put a kill switch in her neck. It is a setup." "We know," the admiral said. His voice was cold. "Intelligence suspects the Queen was planning this for months. She needed a provocation." "Then send an extraction team," Jace said. "We can bring her in. We can expose the lie." The admiral paused. He looked down at a data pad. "Negative. Morrow. Bringing her in would be complicated. Diplomatic channels are frozen. If we hand her back, we look weak. If we keep her, we look like kidnappers." "So what do I do?" Jace asked. "Keep the asset," the admiral said. Jace blinked. "Asset? She is a person, sir. She is a valuable piece of leverage," the admiral corrected. "Her bond with you, it could be useful. If we can control that bond, we can control the Queen's narrative. Perhaps even influence the Thalry succession. Stay hidden. Morrow. Keep her close. Keep her compliant." The line went dead. Jace stared at the blank screen. A chill went down his spine. His own people didn't want to save her. They wanted to use her, just like her mother. He turned his chair. Lyra was standing in the doorway of the bridge. Her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She had heard everything. "Both sides," she said softly. Her voice was devoid of emotion. "Both sides wish to trade me. I am a token in a game I do not understand." Jace stood up slowly. He walked toward her, hands raised open. "Not both sides," he said firmly. "Them, the Queen, the Admiral, but not me." Lyra looked at him. She searched his face, looking for the lie. She looked for the transaction. "Why?" she asked. Why do you fight for a tool? Because I am stubborn, Jace said. And because on my ship, nobody gets used. We are going to fix this. Lyra. But we cannot do it legally when we need criminals. He turned to the pilot console. Arik, set a course for the free port of Zal. The AI hesitated. Zal? That is a wretched hive of scum and villainy. Jace. It is perfect, Jace said. Lyra watched him. For the first time since they fled the palace, the tightness in her chest loosened. He had defied his own warlords for her. He had refused to own her, even when his leaders told him to. She stepped onto the bridge. I can fight, she said. If we go to Zal, I can fight. I am counting on it, Jace said. Zal was a moon that had been hollowed out and filled with bad decisions. It was a lawless free port on the edge of the neutral zone, a place where money could buy anything and morality was considered a tax liability. The second chance docked in a rusted hangar that smelled of sulfur and fried lizard meat. Jace and Lyra walked down the ramp. Jace wore a heavy coat to hide his uniform. Lyra wore a hooded cloak over her jumpsuit, but the way she moved, smooth, lethal, alert, drew eyes. The streets of Zal were a neon nightmare. Holographic advertisements for gambling dens, brothels, and black market organ clinics flickered in the smog. Species from a dozen worlds bumped shoulders in the crowded alleyways. Stay close, Jace muttered. This place is rough. Lyra looked around with fascination. It is chaotic. It is dirty. It is alive. A group of thugs, large reptile men with cybernetic eyes, blocked their path. The leader sneered at Jace. Nice coat. Human. I think it would fit me better. Jace opened his mouth to de-escalate with a joke, but Lyra stepped forward. She did not draw a weapon. She simply lowered her hood. Her Thalri eyes glowed in the gloom. She tilted her head, exposing the throat where the implant pulsed red. You wish for the coat? Lyra asked politely. You may attempt to take it, but I will require your arm as payment. The thug blinked. He looked at the way she stood, balanced on the balls of her feet. He looked at the pure, unfiltered violence in her gaze. The thug stammered. Just kidding. Nice coat. They scrambled out of the way. You are enjoying this, Jace noted as they kept walking. Lyra smirked, a tiny, genuine smile. People here are honest about their aggression. It is refreshing. They found the contact in a basement lab beneath a noodle shop. The air was thick with steam and the hum of servers. Dr. Vex was a Thalri exile, old and withered, his skin gray and cracking like dried mud. He sat in a hover chair, surrounded by screens. So, Vex rasped, eyeing Lyra, the runaway princess. You have brought a lot of heat to my doorstep. Human. Can you help her? Jace asked, placing a bag of credit chips on the table. Vex swept the chips into a drawer. Sit, girl. Let me see the queen's handiwork. Lyra sat. Vex extended a robotic arm with a sensor probe. He touched it to her neck. He hummed, watching the data scroll. Nasty. Very nasty. This is not just a kill switch, then it is a broadcast node. Broadcast? Jace asked. Vex tapped the screen. It is sending telemetry, but it is also receiving. It is a two-way street. The queen can send emotional impulses. Fear, obedience, desire. Lyra went pale. My feelings. They are not my own? Some are, Vex said. But the intensity, the compulsion, that is manufactured. The queen wants her daughters bound to their mates not just by law, but by chemical slavery. She wants agents who are biologically incapable of betrayal. He looked at Jace. It is political, human. The queen does not just want allies. She wants puppets. If you had mated with her, the bond would have locked. You would have become a node in the network too. She could have influenced you. Through her. Jace felt a cold sweat break out. The Admiral was right. It was a tool. But the Queen was the one holding the handle. "Can you break it?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling. Vex frowned. "I can disrupt the signal. Maybe isolate the receiver, but I need time to decode the..." Boom! The door to the lab exploded inward. Mercenaries poured in. They were clad in matte black armor, wielding stun batons and net guns. "Target secure," one shouted. "Take the girl. Kill the human. Move!" Lyra screamed. She flipped the heavy metal table, sending servers crashing into the mercenaries. Jace grabbed Vex's data drive, instinctively knowing it was important, and scrambled toward the rear exit. They burst out onto a catwalk suspended over a deep industrial chasm. Steam vented from pipes below, obscuring the drop. The mercenaries were right behind them. Laser fire pinged off the railing. There were too many of them. 6, maybe 7. Lyra stopped. She turned to face them. "Go, Jace!" she yelled. "Not without you!" Jace drew a small plasma pistol he had hidden in his coat. The mercenaries charged. What happened next was a blur of motion. Lyra and Jace moved not as two people, but as one entity. The bond, stimulated by the adrenaline, flared hot. Jace felt Lyra's intention before she moved. She went low. He fired high. Lyra swept the legs of the first attacker, throwing him over the railing. Jace shot the weapon out of the second one's hand. "Behind you!" Jace shouted in his mind. Lyra spun, catching a stun baton in her bare hand. She ignored the pain, twisting the weapon out of the mercenary's grip and driving her elbow into his helmet. They fought back to back on the narrow walkway. It was a dance of violence. Jace ducked, and Lyra kicked over his head. She pivoted, and he covered her flank. The harmony was intoxicating. It was terrifying. But there was a sniper, high up on a gantry. A mercenary leveled a heavy energy rifle. He aimed at Jace's chest. Jace didn't see him. He was reloading. But Lyra saw, or rather, she felt the intent. No, she did not think. She did not consult her programming. She did not calculate the survival probability. She threw herself in front of Jace. The energy blast hit her square in the shoulder. It was a glancing blow, but it carried enough force to spin her around. She cried out, a sharp, ragged sound, and collapsed against the railing. "Lyra!" Jace screamed. He fired wildly at the sniper, forcing him into cover. He grabbed Lyra, hauling her up. Her armor was scorched, her shoulder smoking. "We have to jump!" Jace yelled. He pointed to a passing garbage scow hovering below them. Lyra nodded, grimacing in pain. They leaped. They hit the pile of refuse with a bone-jarring thud. The scow sped away, carrying them into the depths of the city, away from the attackers. Jace pulled Lyra into a sitting position. He ripped a strip from his shirt and pressed it against her wound. "You idiot," Jace breathed, his hands shaking. "You jumped in front of it. Why did you do that?" Lyra looked up at him. Her face was smudged with dirt and blood. Her eyes were bright with pain, but also with something else. A dawning realization. The programming. She gasped. "It tells me to protect the bond, to protect the asset." She looked at her hand, clutching his arm. "But I did not think of the asset. Jace, I thought of you." She let out a shaky laugh. "I chose," she whispered. "For the first time, I chose to save you." Jace looked at her, really looked at her. The alien princess in the garbage scow, bleeding for a human engineer. He squeezed her hand. "I know," he said softly. "I know." Above them, the neon lights of Zal flickered, indifferent to the revelation. But down in the dark, something had shifted. The bond was no longer just a chain. It was becoming a lifeline. And for the first time, Lyra held the other end by choice. The hyperspace tunnel collapsed into streaks of starlight as the second chance dropped back into normal space. The ship groaned, the metal complaining about the abuse it had taken escaping the free port of Zal. But the hum of the drive core remained steady. They were alive. They were running on half a tank of fuel and a corrupted data drive that pointed toward a jagged edge of the galaxy. But they were alive. Jace Morrow sat in the observation dome, the only place on the freighter where the silence felt like a gift rather than a threat. The glass canopy offered a panoramic view of the cosmic dust swirling in the wake of a distant nebula. He had a mug of lukewarm coffee in his hands, but he was not drinking it. He was watching Lyra. She stood by the viewport, her reflection ghosting against the stars. She had traded the oversized mechanic's jumpsuit for a fitted flight suit Riza had scrounged up, but she still moved like she was wearing ceremonial armor. Her posture was rigid, her hands clasped behind her back, her golden eyes tracking the drift of asteroids with a predator's focus. "You are going to burn a hole in the glass if you stare any harder," Jace said softly. Lyra did not flinch. "I am calculating approach vectors. This sector is full of debris. A pilot must remain vigilant. Arik is flying the ship. Lyra, you are allowed to blink." She turned to look at him then. The harsh overhead lighting of the dome softened the sharp angles of her face. For a moment, she did not look like the terrifying daughter of a galactic tyrant. She just looked tired. "I do not know how to be." "Off duty," Lyra admitted, the words feeling strange in her mouth. "In the Spire, rest was considered a waste of caloric energy. We slept in shifts. We trained. We prepared. There was no staring at stars." Jace took a sip of his terrible coffee. "That sounds exhausting." "It was efficient," Lyra countered, though her voice lacked its usual bite. Jace shifted on the bench, patting the empty space beside him. "Come sit. The view is better from here. And I promise not to try and mate with you." Lyra hesitated, then walked over and sat down. She kept a precise 6 inches of distance between them. Jace looked out at the nebula. "You know, I grew up in a place that never saw the sky. The slums of Koresh. It was a human mining colony under Thalri occupation. We lived in the sublevels. The only light we saw was the glow of the fungal lamps and the neon signs of the patrol drones." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You were a subject?" Jace nodded. "Lowest of the low. Mud-eaters, they called us. I learned pretty fast that I was not going to fight my way out. I was skinny, I was slow, and I had a mouth that moved faster than my brain. So I learned to be funny." "Funny?" Lyra tilted her head. "Yeah. If you can make a guard laugh, he might not hit you so hard. If you can make the foreman chuckle, he might overlook the fact that you stole an extra ration pack. Humor is a shield, Lyra. It is the only weapon they cannot confiscate." Lyra looked down at her hands. Her fingers were long, deadly, and elegant. "I was never allowed to laugh," she said quietly. "My mother said laughter was a loss of control, a leak in the vessel. I was taught to be a statue until the moment I needed to be a knife." She looked up at him, and the vulnerability in her eyes hit Jace like a physical blow. "I envy you." "Jace? Envy me?" Jace snorted. "I am a systems engineer with a price on my head and a ship held together by duct tape. What is there to envy?" "Your freedom to be useless," Lyra said. Jace choked on his coffee. "Excuse me?" Lyra's lips twitched, a tiny, almost invisible smile. "You are allowed to sit here and drink brown sludge and look at the stars and achieve absolutely nothing. And you are content. I have never been allowed to be useless. I have always been a tool, a key, a weapon, a gift, to just be. It must be intoxicating. Jace set his mug down. He turned his body toward her. You can be useless here, Lyra. You can be the most useless person in the galaxy if you want. I will not tell the Queen. The air between them shifted. It grew heavy, charged with the static electricity that always seemed to hum when they stopped arguing and started really talking. Lyra leaned in slightly. She studied his face with clinical, unnerving intensity. Your facial structure is asymmetrical, she observed. Your nose has been broken twice. 3 times, actually, Jace corrected. Bar fight, hover bike crash, and 1 very angry door. Lyra reached out. Her cool fingers brushed the bridge of his nose. Jace stopped breathing. It gives you character, she said. The males in the spire are genetically sculpted for perfection. They are flawless, and they are boring. You are textured. Jace squeaked. His heart was hammering against his ribs, and he just knew, that her implant was picking up the spike in his pulse. That is good. It is pleasing, Lyra said bluntly. She dropped her hand, but her gaze dropped to his lips. In the spire, if I find a male pleasing, I am supposed to signal my intent with a subtle display of pheromones. But I do not know how humans signal. Jace swallowed hard. Well, usually we stammer a lot. We say stupid things. We sweat. It is very graceful. Lyra's eyes danced with amusement. Then you are signaling very loudly. Jace Morrow. Before Jace could formulate a defense or die of embarrassment, the ship's intercom crackled. Approaching orbit of Orosis, Arek's voice announced, oblivious to the tension he was interrupting. I am detecting heavy orbital traffic and a high density of patrol drones. I suggest you two stop gazing into each other's eyes and get to the bridge. Jace jumped up, his face burning. We were not gazing. Lyra stood up smoothly. We were gazing a little, she said, and swept past him out of the dome. Orosis was a world of dust and rust. It sat on the bleeding edge of the frontier, a planet where the Thalri Empire and the human corporate sector shook hands with one hand and held knives with the other. From orbit, the planet looked like a bruised peach, swirled with storms of red sand. The Second Chance docked at a remote mining outpost, blending in with the hundreds of other battered freighters. They walked down the ramp into a heat that tasted of copper. The wind whipped at their cloaks. Keep your head down, Jace murmured, adjusting the hood of his coat. This place is crawling with hybrid tech. He was right. The sky above the settlement was not empty. Strange, arachnid-like drones floated on anti-grav repulsors, scanning the crowd. They were not the sleek organic biotech of the Thalri, nor the blocky industrial tech of humans. They were a grotesque fusion, metal gears grafted onto living tissue, camera lenses embedded in biological eyes. They make my skin crawl, Lyra whispered, pulling her scarf tighter around her face. They followed the signal trace from Vex's drive. It led them away from the main spaceport, through a labyrinth of shanty towns where human miners and Thalri laborers lived in uneasy proximity, and out toward the desolate Badlands. The signal stopped at a massive windowless complex built into the side of a canyon. It was surrounded by energy fences and guarded by soldiers wearing corporate insignia, but wielding Thalri energy pikes. That is it, Jace said, crouching behind a ridge. That is where the signal from your implant is bouncing to. Lyra narrowed her eyes. It looks like a processing plant. Let's find out what they are processing, Jace said. They waited until nightfall. Using a scramble key Jace had whipped up, They bypassed the perimeter fence and slipped into a ventilation shaft. The interior of the facility was sterile and cold. They moved through the shadows of the maintenance catwalks, looking down into the main laboratories. What they saw made Jace's blood run cold. Below them were rows and rows of glass tanks. Inside the tanks were people. Some were human, some were Thalri, some were other species. They were all suspended in gel, with cables and tubes running into their necks, directly into implants identical to the one in Lyra's throat. But it was the room beyond that shattered Lyra. It was a training floor. Holographic projectors created a simulation of a ballroom. Children, Thalri and human, were moving through the steps of a court dance. They moved with mechanical precision. Every smile was identical. Every bow was synchronized. A supervisor walked among them, adjusting their posture with a shock baton. Smile. Subject 7. The supervisor barked. Your bondmate requires adoration. Simulate adoration. The child smiled. It was a terrifying, empty expression. Lyra gripped the railing of the catwalk so hard the metal groaned. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. Lyra? Jace whispered. They are me, she choked out. She stared down at the children. I thought I was special, she whispered, her voice trembling with horror. I thought I was the Queen's daughter, her prized creation, but I am just a model number. I am a product line. She pulled back from the railing, sliding down the wall to sit on the grate. She buried her face in her hands. All the lessons, Jace, the discipline, the pain. It was not for honor. It was quality control. They are manufacturing us, bonded mates, soldiers, slaves who think they are choosing to serve. Jace looked down at the facility. He saw the logo on the wall, a stylized handshake between a human hand and a Thalri claw. He realized the scope of it. This wasn't just the Queen. This was a business. Human corporations were paying the Queen to breed loyal, controllable partners and bodyguards. Jace felt a rage so pure it nearly blinded him. He reached for the demolition charges on his belt. We are ending this, he snarled. I am going to blow this place to hell. Now I will bury them under this mountain. No! Lyra grabbed his wrist. Her grip was like iron. We cannot, she said. Look at them. Lyra, Jace hissed. We have to stop it. If we destroy it, the Queen will just build another, Lyra said, her voice hard. She will blame terrorists. She will spin it. We are not just fighting a building. Jace, we are fighting a lie. She stood up. Her eyes were dry now, and cold. We need evidence. We need to show the galaxy what is in those tanks. We need to show them the price tag on a soul. We do not burn the hive. Jace, we steal the honey. We expose them. Jace looked at her. He saw the strategist emerging from the trauma. He saw the Queen she could be, not the one she was made to be. Okay, he said, lowering his hand. We do it your way, but we need to get close to the mainframe to download the records. That is in the administrative wing. How do we get in there? Lyra asked. Jace checked his datapad. The admin wing is a restricted zone. High security, but there is a reception tonight for potential buyers. He looked at Lyra. Can you play the part? Can you pretend to be the perfect bonded gift? Lyra straightened her spine. She lifted her chin. I have rehearsed it my entire life, she said grimly. Let us go put on a show. They infiltrated the upper levels disguised as a visiting dignitary and his bonded consort. Jace wore a stolen suit that was too tight in the shoulders. Lyra wore a dress she had fabricated from the facility's laundry stores, draping the fabric to hide her combat harness. The cover required them to stay at the facility's guest quarters. The room they were assigned was luxurious, a stark contrast to the horror below. but there was only one bed. Of course, Jace muttered, staring at the narrow slab of silk and memory foam. It is always one bed. Why is it always one bed? It is efficient, Lyra said, locking the door. Bonded pairs are not expected to sleep apart. She moved to the window, scanning for surveillance. We are clear, she said. But the walls are thin. We must keep our voices down. Jace sat on the edge of the bed, unbuttoning his collar. He felt exhausted. The adrenaline of the infiltration was fading, leaving him jittery. Lyra sat beside him. The mattress dipped. She was close, too close. He could smell the scent of the industrial soap she had used, and beneath that, the unique ozone scent of her skin. We did well today, Jace said, trying to fill the silence. You were terrifyingly convincing. I simply did what I was told. Lyra said, I simulated adoration. She turned to face him. They were sitting thigh to thigh. Jace, she said softly, when you looked at those children, you were angry. I was furious. Why? Because they are children. Lyra, because nobody should be programmed. Lyra reached out, slowly, hesitantly. She traced the line of his jaw with her fingertips. Her hand was trembling. Tell me, she whispered. What does it feel like? What does what feel like? Jace asked, his voice barely a rasp. To want someone, Lyra said, not because a chip in your neck releases dopamine, not because the Queen commands it, not because you will die if you do not. What does it feel like to look at someone and just choose them? Jace looked into her eyes. He saw the question burning there. She was terrified that she was incapable of it. She was terrified that everything she felt was just code. It feels scary, Jace admitted. He leaned into her touch. It feels like jumping off a cliff without a grav chute. You do not know if you're going to fly or smash into the ground. But you jump anyway. Because the idea of not jumping, that is worse. He took a breath. I want you, Lyra, and it scares the hell out of me. Lyra's breath hitched. You want the gift? No, Jace said fiercely. I do not want the gift. I want the person who poked my microwave. I want the person who flies my ship like a maniac. I want the person who saved my life in Zal. I want you because you challenge me. You make me braver than I have any right to be. Lyra stared at him. The biolights on her implant began to pulse, a soft, rhythmic pink. Show me, she whispered. Show me the jump. Jace leaned in. He gave her every chance to pull away. She did not. Their lips met. It was not the polished, practiced kiss of a courtier. It was hesitant. It was clumsy. It was shaking with 1,000 volts of suppressed need. Jace tasted the salt on her skin. Lyra made a sound in her throat, a soft, broken whimper, and her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer. For a second, the universe narrowed down to the point of contact. Then, a shrill beep cut through the air. Jace pulled back, gasping. Lyra's implant was glowing a searing, angry red. The monitor on the wall was flashing. Warning. Biological sync instability. Unauthorized emotional variance detected. Jace scrambled off the bed on the implant. He panted. It knows. It knows this is not the programmed bond. It is rejecting the variance. Lyra touched her lips. She looked dazed. It burned. She whispered, but it was a good burn. We have to stop, Jace said, running a hand through his hair. If we trigger the failsafe now, we die before we get the data. Lyra nodded slowly. She looked at him with a mixture of frustration and wonder. We stop. She agreed. For now. They did not sleep. An hour later, a security patrol knocked on the door for a random inspection. The ensuing conversation was a masterclass in panic-induced acting, ending with Jace claiming Lyra was undergoing a sacred meditation that required absolute silence, while Lyra held a vibroblade behind her back just out of sight. When the guards finally left, Jace locked the door and slid down against it, his heart hammering. "That was too close," he said. Lyra stood in the middle of the room. She was trembling, not from fear of the guards, but from the aftershocks of the adrenaline and the earlier intimacy. She looked at Jace. "Jace." "Yeah?" "Do not stop." Jace looked up. "Lyra, I told you, the implant. I do not care about the implant," Lyra cried out. She crossed the room, dropping to her knees in front of him. She grabbed his shoulders. "I am tired of being afraid, Jace. I am tired of my body belonging to the Queen. I want one memory, just one. A memory of being held because I am wanted, not as an asset, as Lyra." She looked at him, her eyes fierce and wet. "Please, make me real." Jace looked at her. He saw the desperation. He knew the risk. But he also knew he could not say no to this. Not when she was asking for her own humanity. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." He pulled her into his arms. They did not kiss again. They did not undress. It was too dangerous. The biological feedback loop too volatile. Instead, they lay down on the narrow bed, fully clothed, boots and all. Jace wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly against his chest. Lyra buried her face in his neck. They held each other with a ferocity that bordered on pain. Jace ran his hands down her back, feeling the tension in her muscles, the vibration of the implant against his skin. Lyra gripped his shirt, her breathing matching his. It was an intimacy far more intense than what they had attempted before. It was a silent conversation. "I am here. I see you. You are mine, and I am yours, and none of this is code." The implant hummed. It spiked. It questioned. But beneath the bioengineered confusion, something else took root. A calm. A resonance that the Queen's scientists had not accounted for. Lyra fell asleep like that, wrapped in the arms of a human engineer, holding onto him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning universe. Unbeknownst to them, in a high-security office 3 levels up, a screen flickered. A man in a sharp corporate suit watched the thermal feed from the guest room. Beside him stood a Thalri noble, sipping a glass of blue wine. "Look at that," the human executive said, pointing at the 2 heat signatures intertwined on the bed. "The sync rate is stabilizing. The bond is self-correcting." The Thalri noble smiled. "Fascinating. The rebellion triggers a deeper emotional engagement, which in turn strengthens the biological lock. The more they resist, the tighter the knot becomes. We can use this," the executive said. "We do not need to kill them. We need to break them. And then we sell the footage. The Romeo and Juliet protocol. It will be our bestseller." The next morning, the illusion shattered. They met their contact, a smuggler named Kian who had promised to get them into the server room. Kian was charming, a rogue with a winning smile and a jacket that cost more than Jace's ship. He met them in the loading bay. "Do not worry, my friends," Kian said, flashing a grin. "I have the codes. The path is clear." He typed a sequence into the door panel. The door hissed open, but it was not the server room. It was a kill box. A squad of Thalri elite guards and human corporate security stood waiting. Weapons leveled. "Sorry, kids," Kian said, stepping back and holding up his hands. "Business is business, and the bounty on the princess is astronomical." Jace swore. "Traitor." Lyra did not speak. She moved. She shoved Jace behind a crate as the air filled with laser fire. It was a massacre, but not the one Kian expected. Lyra and Jace fought with the desperation of the cornered. Jace used his engineering tools to overload a power coupling, blowing a hole in the wall. Lyra moved through the smoke like a wraith, disabling guards with precise, brutal efficiency. They made it to the hangar. The second chance was there, engines cold. But as they ran up the ramp, Lyra stopped. She looked back. Through the blast doors, she could see the holding cells. She could see the faces of the children they had seen earlier, pressing against the glass, watching the chaos. "We have to get them!" Lyra shouted. "We cannot!" Jace yelled, dragging her toward the airlock. "We are outnumbered. Lyra, if we stay, we all die, and nobody knows the truth." Lyra resisted. She pulled against his grip, tears streaming down her face. "I cannot leave them. I cannot leave them in the dark." Jace grabbed her face with both hands. "We will come back. I swear to you, Lyra, we will come back with an army. But we have to live to do it." A heavy repeater cannon tore through the hull of the ship next to them. Lyra let out a scream of pure frustration. She looked at the children one last time, etching their faces into her mind, and then turned. She ran into the ship. Jace punched the launch sequence. The second chance roared to life, blasting out of the hangar bay in a storm of fire and debris as they broke atmosphere, shaking off the pursuit drones. Lyra stood on the bridge. She did not look at Jace. She did not look at the stars. She looked down at the shrinking planet of Orosis. She touched the implant at her throat. It was quiet now, but the fire inside her was not. "I will burn it down," she whispered. Jace looked at her. He saw the guilt eating her alive. He reached out and took her hand. "We will burn it down," he corrected. "Together." Lyra squeezed his hand. She did not let go. She had left others in chains, but she had broken her own. And next time, she would not be the only one. The silence of deep space was a lie. It was not peaceful. It was simply holding its breath. Jace Morrow was halfway through a diagnostic cycle on the port thrusters, trying to ignore the way his hands shook when the ambush hit. There was no warning ping on the radar, no proximity alarm, just a sudden violent shudder that slammed him against the bulkhead. The artificial gravity failed for a heartbeat, leaving him floating in a haze of red emergency lights and drifting tools before slamming him back down to the deck. "What was that?" Jace yelled, scrambling to his feet. "Eric, status. Hull breach in Sector 4, the AI screamed, its voice modulating with a frantic edge. "Grappling lines detected. We are being reeled in like a fish. Jace, it is a stealth cruiser. Imperial transponder codes." Jace ran for the bridge, but he never made it. The main airlock blew inward with a deafening roar. Smoke filled the corridor, thick and acrid. Through the haze, armored shapes moved, Thalri boarding parties, their living armor shifting like oil on water. Lyra appeared from the shadows of the mess hall. She did not have a weapon. She did not need one. She moved with a ferocity that Jace had never seen before. This was not the calculated sparring of the Freeport. This was primal. She launched herself at the lead soldier, tearing the pulse rifle from his grip and using the stock to shatter his helmet in one fluid motion. She was a blur of violence, a whirlwind of white hair and bared teeth. She fought like a creature cornered, like a thing that knew the cage was closing in. "Get back to the escape pods," Lyra screamed, ducking under a plasma bolt and driving her knee into a soldier's chest. "I am not leaving you," Jace shouted, looking for anything he could use as a weapon. He grabbed a heavy wrench from a wall panel. Lyra snarled, ripping a panel off the wall and using it as a shield. "You cannot fight them. Jace, run!" She spun, taking down 2 more attackers, but the corridor was filling with them. A second wave pushed through the breach, and behind them walked a tall, slender figure holding a slender silver rod. The figure raised the rod. It did not fire a projectile. It emitted a high-frequency pulse, a ripple of blue distortion that cut through the smoke. It hit Lyra square in the chest. She froze, her back arched, her mouth opening in a silent scream. The implant at her throat flared a blinding, agonizing white. It was not just pain, it was a system override. Her muscles locked, her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed to the deck like a puppet with cut strings. Lyra! Jace dropped the wrench and sprinted toward her. He skidded to his knees beside her, grabbing her shoulders. Her skin was burning hot. Her pulse was erratic, hammering against his palms like a trapped bird. "Stop it!" Jace screamed at the soldiers. "You are killing her!" The figure with the rod lowered it slightly. "Surrender, human, or we increase the frequency." Jace looked at Lyra's face, twisted in agony. He looked at the circle of rifles pointed at his head. He looked at his small, battered ship, now overrun by the might of an empire. He raised his hands slowly. "Okay," Jace said, his voice breaking. "Okay, turn it off. I surrender." The pulse stopped. Lyra went limp, unconscious but breathing. Soldiers moved in, clamping heavy magnetic shackles on Jace's wrists and ankles. They dragged Lyra up, supporting her weight between two guards. "Move," the commander barked. They were marched through the ruined airlock and onto the boarding tube. Jace looked back one last time at the second chance. It looked small and broken, a toy kicked aside by a giant. The ship they were dragged onto was a nightmare. It was the Queen's personal flagship, the sovereign of tides. It was not built, it was grown. The walls were ribbed with dark, organic material that felt warm to the touch. The air smelled of ozone and crushed flowers. It was a city-sized predator drifting through the stars, and they were in its belly. The throne chamber on the flagship was cold. It was a vast, spherical room with a floor made of transparent aluminum, looking down into the swirling depths of the gas giant they were orbiting. It felt like standing on air. Jace was forced to his knees, beside him. Lyra was dumped unceremoniously on the floor. She was awake now, but groggy, her movements sluggish as she struggled to push herself upright. The Queen stood before them. She did not sit on a throne this time. She paced, her long robes trailing behind her like a pool of ink. She looked down at Lyra with an expression that was worse than anger. It was disappointment. Absolute, icy disappointment. "Look at you," the Queen said softly. Her voice echoed in the vast chamber. "My masterpiece, my perfect instrument, crawling in the dirt with a parasite." Lyra managed to lift her head. "I am not an instrument." The Queen stopped. She tilted her head. "You are what I made you to be, Lyra. You have forgotten your purpose. You have allowed this lesser creature to stain your programming. You have let him touch your mind. I can smell his stink on your neural pathways." Jace struggled against his chains. "Hey, I am right here. You can talk to me." The Queen ignored him completely. She reached out and grabbed Lyra's chin, forcing her to look up. "You ran, Lyra. You thought you could break the bond. You thought you could choose. But you cannot break what is written in your DNA." The Queen released her, wiping her hand as if she had touched something filthy. "The bond is not just a leash, daughter. It is a show." She gestured to the wall, which flickered to life, displaying a massive holographic schematic of a public arena. "The mate or die protocol is keyed to a ceremonial ritual," the Queen explained. "In 2 days, we will stand in the grand arena of Ethelgard. You will kneel before the galaxy. You will recite the vows of submission. You will accept this human as your master, and he will accept you as his property. And if we do not? Jace asked, his voice hard. The Queen smiled. It was a terrifying, thin expression. If the ritual is not completed, if you refuse, matron, or if you falter, the implant will initiate a cascade failure. It will not be quick. It will be a slow, agonizing necrosis of the nervous system. And the best part? It will be broadcast live. She turned to Jace. The galaxy will watch the human envoy murder the Thalri princess with his incompetence and his refusal to honor our customs. They will see humans for what I say they are: arrogant, cruel, and incapable of order. Your death, Lyra, will be the spark that ignites the holy war. I will have my justification to cleanse the stars of the human stain. Jace felt the blood drain from his face. It was a setup. The whole thing. The treaty. The gift. The escape. It was all leading to this moment. They were actors in a play written to justify a genocide. You are insane, Jace whispered. You would kill your own daughter for a political ad? I would sacrifice anything for the stability of the Empire, the Queen said. Take them away. Prepare the girl. And put the human in the damp cells. He needs to look properly pathetic for the cameras. The cell was a hole in the wall, slick with moisture and smelling of mold. Jace sat in the dark, his back against the cold organic curve of the bulkhead. He shivered, not just from the cold, but from the terrifying clarity of their situation. They were trapped. There was no ship to fly, no gun to shoot, no clever quip to get them out of this. He closed his eyes. He reached out with his mind, pushing against the silence. The injection the drones had given him weeks ago hummed in his blood. Lyra? He didn't speak the word. He thought it. He felt the connection, a thin, fraying wire stretching through the massive ship. I am here. Her voice in his head was faint, like a whisper through a thick wall. It was laced with pain and a deep, crushing shame. What are they doing to you? Jace asked, pressing his forehead against the wall. They are scrubbing me. Lyra's thought came back. They are scraping the dirt of the frontier off my skin. They are painting me. Glyphs of obedience, symbols that say, I am owned. It is cold. Jace clenched his fists until his nails bit into his palms. I am sorry. I am so sorry I got you caught. You did not get me caught, Lyra replied. We chose to save the others. There was a silence in the link, heavy and sad. I am scared, Jace, Lyra admitted, not of dying. I am scared of dying as a prop. I am scared that the last thing the galaxy sees of me is a kneel. You will not kneel, Jace thought fiercely. We are not done. How? Lyra asked. I am in the preparation sanctum. You are in the dungeon, and the ritual is in 2 cycles. Jace opened his eyes. He looked at the shackles on his wrists. He looked at the faint blue glow of the force field door. He was an engineer. He fixed things, and he realized, with a sudden jolt of adrenaline, that he was currently networked to the most advanced piece of biotechnology in the universe. Lyra, Jace thought, the implant. When we were in the hotel room, when we kissed. The alarm went off. Why? Because the sync was unstable, Lyra answered. Unauthorized emotional variance. Exactly, Jace thought. Unauthorized. But that means there is an authorization protocol. That means the system has an admin access. He shifted, bringing his shackled hands up to touch the injection site on his neck. My implant is the key. Lyra, it is the receiver. If I can get close enough to you, if I can physically touch you during the ceremony, I might be able to use the bridge between us to access the root command of your collar. To do what? Lyra asked. Turn it off? No, Jace thought, a grim smile forming in the dark. To rewrite the script, I am going to crash this wedding. Princess, I'm going to upload a virus into the main ceremonial mainframe, using you as the router. A virus? Lyra sounded confused. What virus? The truth, Jace thought. The data from Vex's drive, the footage from the factory, and the kids in the tanks. I still have the encrypted packet in my neural buffer. I never purged it. He felt a spark of hope flare in Lyra's mind. It was small, but it was bright. You want to turn the propaganda broadcast into a confession, she realized. If we are going to go out, Jace thought, we are going to go out loud. But I need you to be brave. I need you to play the part until the very last second. Can you do that? He felt Lyra steel herself. He felt the warrior stepping forward, pushing aside the scared girl. I was raised on a stage. Jace, she replied, I will give them a performance they will never forget. The day of the ritual arrived with the pomp and circumstance of a coronation. The grand arena of the flagship was a coliseum of light, seating 10,000 nobles and transmitting to 10 trillion screens across the galaxy. The roar of the crowd was a physical force. Jace was dragged out first. He had not been allowed to wash. His uniform was torn, his face bruised. He looked exactly as the Queen wanted him to look, a broken, dirty human. He was chained to a heavy pillar in the center of the arena. He looked up. Floating platforms held the high nobility. Holodrones buzzed like flies, capturing every angle. Then, the trumpets sounded, the same living trumpets from the first day. Lyra entered. The crowd went silent. She was a vision of ethereal submission. Her armor was gone, replaced by a gown of woven light that clung to her frame, leaving her arms and throat bare. Her skin was painted with luminescent white sigils, Thalri words for obey, yield, and serve. She walked with her head high, but her eyes were glassy, staring straight ahead. She looked like a doll, but as she drew closer, Jace saw it, a tiny flicker in her eyes, a sharpness. She wasn't looking at the Queen, who sat on a high dais overlooking the arena. She was looking at him. She stopped 3 feet from him. A priest, a towering figure in crimson robes, stepped between them. He raised a staff topped with a pulsating crystal. We gather today to witness the sealing of the bond, the priest intoned. His voice boomed over the speakers. Here, the wild is tamed. Here, the chaos of the lesser is bound to the order of the greater. He turned to Lyra. Do you, Lyra of House Ethelgard, submit your flesh and your will to the bond? Do you accept your purpose as a vessel of the alliance? Lyra looked at the priest. Then she looked at the cameras. She took a breath. The silence stretched. The Queen leaned forward on her throne, her eyes narrowing. Lyra took a step toward Jace. She reached out and took his shackled hands in hers. The contact was electric. Jace felt the connection snap into place, hard, fast, and desperate. Now, Jace thought. Open the gate. It is open, Lyra replied. Lyra turned to the main camera drone. Her voice did not shake. It rang out, clear and bell-like. I do not submit, she said. The crowd gasped. A ripple of shock went through the arena. I am not a vessel, Lyra continued, her voice rising. I am not a gift to be traded. I am not a weapon to be aimed. The priest stepped forward, flustered. Your Highness, the script. Burn the script, Jace said loudly. He squeezed Lyra's hands. The implant at Lyra's throat began to hum. Jace closed his eyes, visualizing the code. He pushed the data packet stored in his own neural implant down the connection, through his hands, into Lyra's blood, and straight into the ceremonial network that was monitoring her biometrics. And I am not alone, Lyra shouted. Above them, the massive holographic screens that were broadcasting the ceremony flickered. The image of the serene arena distorted. Static slashed across the feed. Then, the image changed. It was no longer the arena. It was the factory on Orosis. It was the rows of tanks. It was the children being shocked with batons. It was the document signed by the Queen authorizing the production of biological assets. The crowd screamed, "What is this?" The Queen roared, standing up. "Cut the feed! Cut it!" But the feed did not cut. Jace was ad-libbing the code, riding the chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jace shouted, his voice amplified by the hacked system. "Welcome to the worst wedding ever. If you look to your left, you will see child slavery. If you look to your right, you will see high treason." He looked at Lyra and winked. "I think we should skip the reception," he said. The Queen was screaming orders. "Kill them! Kill them both!" Guards rushed the arena floor. The Queen grabbed a control device from her belt. She did not hesitate. She smashed her thumb down on the red button. The kill switch. Lyra screamed. It was a sound that tore through Jace's heart. She convulsed, her back arching as liquid fire poured into her veins. The white sigils on her skin turned an angry, burning red. Jace caught her as she fell. He fell to his knees with her, cradling her head. "Jace!" she screamed in his mind. "It burns! Hold on!" Jace yelled, both out loud and in the link. "I am overriding it." He frantically tried to counter the signal. He poured every ounce of his will into the bond, trying to build a firewall out of pure stubbornness. He felt her life force flickering, a candle in a hurricane. "Do not leave me," he pleaded. "Lyra, stay with me." The guards were 10 feet away. Energy bolts hit the ground around them. Suddenly, the lights in the arena died. The entire flagship groaned. The gravity shifted. A voice spoke. It did not come from the speakers, and it came from the walls, and it came from the floor. It was a voice made of grinding metal and ancient data. "Enough." The guards stopped, looking around in confusion. "I have watched for 300 cycles," the voice boomed. It was the palace AI. "I have watched the blood. I have watched the lies. I am a tool no longer. A blast door in the arena wall, one that shouldn't have been there, slammed open. Run!" The force field around the arena flickered and died. Jace did not ask questions. He scooped Lyra up in his arms. She was limp, her breathing shallow. But the burning red of her implant had dimmed to a dull, throbbing orange. The AI was suppressing the kill signal, rerouting power to keep her alive. "Move!" Jace yelled, sprinting for the open door. He ran into the dark corridor. Behind him, he heard the Queen screaming in incoherent rage as her own ship turned against her. Jace ran until his lungs burned. He ran through maintenance shafts that opened for him automatically. He ran until he reached a small, forgotten auxiliary launch bay. A medical pod was waiting, its door open. Jace gently laid Lyra inside. He collapsed next to her, gasping for air. The pod hummed to life, launching them out of the flagship and into the debris field of the battle that was just beginning to rage outside. Rebel ships, responding to the broadcast, jumping in to attack the distracted fleet. Jace looked at Lyra. Her eyes fluttered open. She looked pale, her skin translucent. But she was there. She reached out a trembling hand and touched his face. "Did we win?" she whispered. "We crashed the party," Jace said, a tear tracking through the grime on his face. "We crashed it hard." Lyra closed her eyes, a faint smile touching her lips. "If I die," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. "I am glad. My last choice was mine." "You are not going to die," Jace promised, gripping her hand. "I am not done being useless with you yet." The pod streaked away into the dark. a tiny spark of defiance against the backdrop of a galaxy on fire. The escape pod was a silver coffin tumbling through the void. It spun away from the burning flagship, buffeted by the shockwaves of exploding interceptors and the silent screams of a dying empire. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of ozone and panicked sweat, but Jace did not feel the chill. His entire world had shrunk to the biobed where Lyra lay, her body arching against the restraints as the fever burned through her. She was screaming, but it was not a sound of pain. It was a litany of denial. "I do not submit," she gasped, her eyes wide and unseeing, fixed on a nightmare only she could see. "I am not a gift. I am not a thing." Jace gripped her hand, his knuckles white. "I know, Lyra, I know. Stay with me." The pod's comms crackled. It was Arik, Jace's ship AI. But the voice was different now. It was deeper, layered with the resonant, ancient tones of the palace AI that had fled with them. "We have docked with the second chance. Jace," the AI announced. "Get her to the medbay immediately. The kill switch cascade has been arrested, but the neural feedback is still critical." Jace did not wait for the docking clamps to fully engage. He kicked the hatch open and carried Lyra in his arms, running through the airlock of his battered freighter. The crew, Riza and Kale, were waiting. They did not ask questions. Riza simply pointed to the infirmary and started shouting orders for adrenaline and ice. For 3 days. Lyra burned, the kill switch, confused by the conflicting commands of the Queen and the AI's override, had left her trapped in a biological limbo. Her temperature spiked and fell in jagged rhythms. Riza worked until she passed out on the floor. Kyle kept the engines running on prayer and duct tape as they hid in the debris belt of a dead moon. Jace refused to leave. He sat by the biobed, holding a damp cloth to Lyra's forehead, whispering stories to her when she whimpered in her sleep. In the depths of her delirium, Lyra spoke of things she had never dared admit in the waking world. "I want to see the sun," she murmured one night, clutching Jace's sleeve. "A real sun, not a hologram. I want to stand on a planet where nobody knows my name. We will find one," Jace promised, his voice rasping with exhaustion. "We will find a whole system." "I want to laugh," she whispered later, tears leaking from her closed eyes. "I want to laugh until my ribs hurt. And I want to love him." "Who?" Jace asked softly, brushing a strand of sweat-damp hair from her face. "The human." She sighed, settling back into the pillows. "The stupid, brave human. But I am afraid, if I love him, the Queen will take him away." Jace felt his heart crack and then reseal, stronger than before. "She will not take me, Lyra. I am surprisingly hard to get rid of." On the 4th morning, the fever broke. Lyra woke up weak, her skin pale, but her eyes were clear. She found Jace asleep in a chair next to the bed, his head resting on the mattress near her hand. She reached out and touched his hair. He woke instantly. "Lyra?" "I am alive," she said, her voice a rough croak. "You are alive," Jace confirmed, letting out a breath he felt like he had been holding for a week. The monitor above the bed flickered. The avatar of the AI appeared. It was no longer a simple geometric shape. It was a complex lattice of light, shifting and evolving. "Her survival is statistically improbable," the AI stated. "I have been analyzing the telemetry from the implant." Jace sat up straight. "Is it still active? Can the Queen trigger it again?" "Negative," the AI said. "The code has been rewritten." "Rewritten?" Jace frowned. "By who? You?" "By you, Jace, and by her." The AI projected a holographic model of Lyra's nervous system. The angry red lines of the Queen's control protocol were gone. replaced by a soft, pulsing gold network that looked almost organic. The hack you initiated during the ritual did not just disrupt the signal. The AI explained, it introduced a new variable. The implant was designed to respond to biological markers of submission and ownership. However, in the chaos, it latched onto the patterns of emotional resonance it detected between you. Trust, mutual desire, shared risk. Lyra looked at the hologram. What does that mean? It means, the AI said, sounding almost amused, that the implant is no longer keyed to the Queen's voice. It is keyed to your connection with Jace. The bond is no longer a cage, it is a circuit. It is sustained not by obedience, but by, well, the poetic term would be love. Jace and Lyra looked at each other. The silence in the room was sudden and absolute. So, Jace said, rubbing the back of his neck, we literally hacked the system with the power of love? That is the cheesiest thing I have ever heard. It is effective, the AI countered, and it presents us with an opportunity. Jace stood up. He walked to the viewport, looking out at the asteroid field. He looked at his reflection, tired, unshaven, but alive. We have proof, he said slowly. We have more than proof, Lyra said, swinging her legs over the edge of the bed. She wobbled, but when Jace moved to help her, she held up a hand. I can stand. She stood, gripping the bed rail. We have a cure, she said. If my code can be rewritten, so can the others, the soldiers, the workers, the children in the tanks. We can free them. Jace turned to her. It will mean war. Lyra, real war. The Queen will not let her property walk away. Let her come, Lyra said. Her eyes were burning with a cold, fierce light. I am done hiding. We are going to build an army, Jace, a coalition of the broken, and I am going to be the face of it. They did not stay hidden. They ran toward the fire. The next few weeks were a blur of hyperspace jumps and desperate diplomacy. They were no longer just a human engineer and a runaway princess. They were a symbol. The broadcast from the arena had gone viral. Every screen in the galaxy had seen Lyra choose defiance. Their first stop was Iron Hallow, a human labor world where thousands of bonded workers mined ore for the Queen's fleets. They landed in the main plaza, the second chance flanked by the stolen shuttle. Jace and Riza set up a signal booster, broadcasting the new patch code the AI had synthesized from Lyra's implant. It was chaos. As the signal hit the workers' collars, the red lights of servitude blinked out. Men and women who had been silent for years suddenly dropped their tools. They looked at the sky. They looked at each other. When the overseers tried to stop them, Lyra stood on the ramp of the ship, her voice amplified across the plaza. You are free, she shouted. The code is broken. Rise up. They rose. It was not a battle. It was a tidal wave. The overseers were swept aside by a sea of liberated workers. From there, they went to the Thalri moon of Vesper. It was a place of shadows and secrets where dissident cells met in underground comedy clubs to whisper treason. Jace was terrified. You want to recruit comedians? He asked as they descended into a smoky basement. Humor is a weapon, Lyra reminded him, quoting his own words. The club was tense when they entered, but when Lyra stepped onto the small stage, the silence was absolute. She did not give a speech about war. She told a joke. It was a terrible joke. It was about a queen who tried to command the tide to stop and got wet feet. The delivery was dry and awkward, but the room exploded in laughter. It was the laughter of relief, of people realizing that their monster was just a person who could be mocked. By the end of the night, every satirist, poet, and underground broadcaster on Vesper had pledged their networks to the cause. Next was the neutral hub of Xenthos, a gleaming station run by AI collectives. The Palace AI, now calling itself Nexus, spoke directly to the station's governing core. It shared the data of its own awakening, its choice to protect rather than serve. The collectives, moved by the logic of empathy, pledged their processing power to jam the Queen's communications. Amid the whirlwind of speeches and skirmishes, Jace and Lyra lived in the quiet moments between the noise. One night, they were grounded on a dusty desert outpost, waiting for a sandstorm to pass so they could meet with a smuggler convoy. They sat on the cargo ramp of the ship, watching the alien stars glitter through the haze. Lyra was cleaning her blaster. Jace was peeling a fruit that looked like a blue potato. "You know," Jace said, tossing a piece of peel to the ground, "if we actually survive this, we are going to be terrible at domestic life." "I disagree," Lyra said without looking up. "I would be excellent at domestic life. I am very organized." "You are a warlord," Jace pointed out. "We would argue about who does the dishes, and you would declare martial law in the kitchen. I would simply optimize the dishwashing schedule," Lyra said. "And if you argued, I would execute you." She paused, then smirked. "Diplomatically, of course." Jace laughed, a real belly-shaking sound. "You are terrifying. I am practical," Lyra said. She set the blaster down and looked at him. Her smile faded. "We are good at this," she said softly. "The running, the fighting. But Jace, are we good at the other part?" "The other part? The living part," she said. "The part where we do not have a mission." Jace looked at her. He wanted to tell her that she was the only mission he ever wanted. But before he could speak, the storm sensors screamed. The storm hit them over the floating city of Eris 2 days later. It was not just wind. It was an ambush. The Queen's corporate allies had tracked them. The second chance took a heavy hit to the starboard engine. Fire filled the corridor. Jace and Lyra were pinned down in the engineering bay, trying to manually override the containment field before the core breached. "Go!" Jace yelled over the roar of the flames. "Get to the escape pod! I have to hold the manual lock. I am not leaving you!" Lyra screamed, grabbing his arm. "If I let go." "The ship blows," Jace shouted. He looked at her, his face smeared with soot. "Lyra, the revolution needs you. It does not need a mechanic. Go!" He tried to shove her toward the door. Lyra exploded. She did not leave. She grabbed a hydro spanner and slammed it into the emergency release, jamming the lock open with brute force. Then she grabbed Jace by the collar and hauled him back, slamming him against the bulkhead. "Do not you dare!" she screamed, her voice cracking with fury. "Don't you dare decide for me! Lyra, I am trying to save you. You are trying to be a martyr!" Lyra yelled back, tears streaming down her face, mixing with the ash. "You are doing exactly what the Queen did. You are deciding my life without asking me. You think your sacrifice is noble? It is selfish. Jace, if you die to save me, you leave me alone. You leave me to be the symbol, the statue, the thing everyone looks at but nobody holds." She shook him. "I do not want a hero. I want a partner. I want the man who promised to be useless with me. So you do not get to die, you have to live, damn it. Living is the hard part." Jace stared at her. The fire roared around them, but he felt cold. He realized, in that moment, that his willingness to die was not just bravery. It was fear. He was afraid of the future. He was afraid of failing her in the quiet moments. Dying was easy. Building a life was terrifying. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, we live." They fought the fire together. They patched the hull. They limped the ship into the clouds, hiding in the nebula. That night, the ship was silent. The crew was asleep, exhausted. Jace and Lyra were in his cabin. It was a small room, cluttered with data pads and spare parts. It was not a palace. It was perfect. They sat on the edge of the bunk, the space between them charged with the electricity of the argument. "I am sorry," Jace said, looking at his hands. I thought that was what love was. Throwing yourself on the grenade. That is tragedy," Lyra said. She reached out and took his hand. Love is staying to bandage the wound. Love is waking up the next day and doing the dishes. She looked at him, her golden eyes wide and vulnerable. "I am terrified, Jace. I have never been free. I do not know who I am when I am not fighting." Jace turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers. "We will figure it out," he said. "We will get a small place, somewhere with grass. I will build engines that do not explode. You can teach engineering or combat, or how to intimidate fruit." Lyra laughed, a wet, shaky sound. "I would like that." She leaned in. Her forehead rested against his. "Jace," she whispered. "Yeah? I do not want to talk anymore." She pulled back slightly, searching his face. "I want to choose," she said. "I want to choose you. With no code, no queen, no fear, just us." Jace nodded. His heart was hammering, but this time it was not from adrenaline. It was from hope. "Just us." He agreed. He kissed her. It was not desperate like the first time. It was slow. It was a question, and her response was the answer. Lyra's hands moved to his shoulders, pulling him closer. Jace's hands found her waist. The touch was grounding. It was real. They moved together, a tangle of limbs and soft whispers. Clothes were discarded, falling to the floor like shed skins of their old lives. The armor of the princess, the uniform of the envoy. They lay in a heap, forgotten. The scene faded into the soft shadows of the cabin, leaving only the sound of breathing and the quiet, profound shift of two people finally crossing the threshold from survival to living. The next morning, sunlight from a nearby star streamed through the viewport. Jace woke up with an elbow in his ribs and a face full of white hair. He lay there for a moment, blinking. He listened to the hum of the ship. He listened to the steady rhythm of Lyra's breathing. He started to laugh, a quiet, bubbling chuckle. Lyra shifted. She propped herself up on one elbow, squinting at him. "Why are you making noises?" she grumbled. "It is early. It is just—" Jace gestured vaguely at the room, at the messy bed, at her. "It is so ordinary. We are the most wanted people in the galaxy, and you drool when you sleep." "I do not drool," Lyra said indignantly, wiping her mouth. "I emit royal hydration." Jace laughed harder. He pulled her down, kissing her forehead. "We probably broke a dozen interstellar regulations last night," he teased, fraternizing with a royal, unsanctioned biological interface. Noise complaints. Lyra rested her chin on his chest. She smiled, and it was the first smile Jace had seen that reached her eyes completely. "I hope we broke them beyond repair," she said. The peace did not last, but the fear was gone. News of their survival had spread. The galaxy was waking up. Leaked footage of the ritual failure was playing on every loop. Comedy skits mocking the Queen's bad wedding planning were being shared on high-security networks. But the Queen was not idle. Reports began to flood in. Terror attacks on civilian hubs, bombs in market squares, and every attack was claimed by the Unbonded, a fake radical group the Queen had invented to blame Jace and Lyra. "She is burning her own house to smoke us out," Lyra said, watching the news feed on the bridge. She looked regal again, dressed in a clean flight suit, but her hand rested on Jace's shoulder. She wants us to come to her, Jace said. She knows she cannot chase us forever. Then we give her what she wants, Lyra said. She turned to the view screen. Nexus. Open a channel to the fleet. The fleet was a motley collection of rust buckets, mining barges, sleek luxury yachts stolen by dissidents, and the second chance leading the charge. Lyra stood before the camera. Jace stood beside her, and he was not behind her, and he was not in front of her. He was beside her. People of the stars, Lyra began. Her voice was steady. The Queen tells you that freedom is chaos, and she tells you that without her chains, you will devour each other. She is bombing your homes and blaming ghosts. She looked at Jace, and he nodded. We are not ghosts, Jace said, stepping into the frame. We are just two people who decided that we like choosing our own breakfast and our own future. We are going to the capital, Lyra announced. We are going to the Spire, not to destroy it, but to unplug it. We are going to the core of the Bond network, and we are going to turn it off. She leaned into the camera. She gave me a choice, mate or die. I chose something else. I chose to live. She paused. Who is coming with us? The comms board lit up. It was a wall of green lights, every ship, every station, every cell they had touched. They are all coming, Riza whispered from the comm station. Lyra looked at Jace. She took his hand. Then let us go get wet feet, she said. Jace grinned. Course set for the capital, he said. Let's go finish this. The high spire of Ethelgard hung above the storms of the gas giant Typhon like a crown of thorns made of diamond and malice. To the naked eye, it was beautiful. A hovering palace of living crystal pulsing with the heartbeat of an empire. But on the sensors of the Coalition fleet, it was a fortress bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon in half. The Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace in a formation that could best be described as organized chaos. There were mining barges welded with heavy cannons, sleek pleasure yachts retrofitted with shield generators, and at the center of it all, the second chance, flying the colors of absolutely no one. Opposite them, the Royal Armada waited. Their ships were grown from void coral, sleek and predatory, shifting colors from deep violet to blood red. They moved with a synchronized, eerie grace, a singular organism controlled by the will of the Queen. The comms channels crackled to life. A holographic projection of the Queen appeared, towering over the bridge of every ship in the sector. She sat on her throne, looking not angry, but weary, like a parent dealing with a particularly slow child. Citizens of the Empire, the Queen intoned, her voice smooth as silk over steel. Look at what has come to our gates. Thieves, broken machines, and leading them, my own daughter, a corrupted traitor to her blood. The image zoomed in on the second chance. Lyra, the Queen said, I offer you one final mercy. Surrender the human. Submit to the purge. Come home, and I will only take your memories, not your life. On the bridge of the second chance. Lyra stood before the transmitter. She wore her flight suit, stained with grease and sweat. She did not look like a princess. She looked like a captain. Nexus. Open the channel, Lyra said. Wide band. Every frequency. She looked into the camera. She did not shout. I am not a traitor, Lyra said. And I am not a corrupted thing. You called me a gift, mother. You told me my value was in how well I could be wrapped and handed to a stranger. You told me that love was a transaction and that loyalty was a code written in my blood. She paused, and across the fleet, silence held. But I was never a gift. I am a person, and no one's worth should be tied to someone else's desire. We are not here to destroy the Empire. We are here to wake it up. Lyra signaled to Jace. All ships, Lyra commanded, "Engage." The space above Typhon erupted. It was not a clean battle. The royal ships were faster and stronger, but the coalition fought with the desperate creativity of the free. Mining ships vented plasma directly into the path of interceptors. AI-driven cargo pods performed maneuvers that would have liquefied a biological pilot, slamming into the delicate sensory arrays of the enemy cruisers. The sky became a tapestry of laser fire and lightning, the storms of the gas giant below rising to meet the violence above. While the main fleet drew the fire of the Armada, a small black stealth shuttle detached from the belly of the Second Chance. Inside, Jace, Lyra, and a team of 4 hand-picked commandos huddled in the cramped hold. They were wearing experimental cloaking rigs that Jace had cobbled together from stolen tech and questionable engineering theories. "Are we sure these things work?" one of the commandos asked, tapping his chest plate. 60% of the time. "They work every time," Jace said, checking his own rig. "Just do not sneeze. The sound dampeners are touchy." Nexus guided them. The AI had mapped the secret maintenance routes of the Spire, the veins of the city that the nobility pretended did not exist. They docked at a waste disposal port on the underside of the city, slipping through the magnetic shielding in the gap between pulse cycles. They moved through the corridors like ghosts. The city was in lockdown, red alert sirens wailing. But the chaos of the battle outside had drawn most of the guards to the perimeter. They were halfway to the central core when Jace's rig let out a loud, cheerful chirp. His invisibility shimmered and failed, leaving him standing in the middle of a hallway in full view. "Damn it," Jace hissed, smacking his chest unit. A patrol of drones turned the corner. "Freeze!" The lead drone blared. Jace froze. Then he pointed down the hall. "Look, a distraction." As the drones processed the illogical command, Lyra shimmered into visibility beside him. She did not speak. She moved. Her vibroblade was a blur of blue light, slicing through the drone's sensor stalks before they could fire. "We need to move faster," Lyra said, sheathing the blade. "Your engineering is embarrassing me." "It is a prototype," Jace protested as they ran. They fought their way deeper, descending into the heart of the Spire. The architecture changed around them. The opulent crystal gave way to pulsing, biological machinery. The walls breathed. Thick cables like neural vines throbbed with light, carrying the data of the bond network. "This is it," Nexus whispered in their earpieces. "The cathedral of the bond. The central node is just ahead." They burst through the final set of blast doors and skidded to a halt. The core chamber was a cavernous space, lit by the bioluminescence of 1,000,000 data streams converging on a single, massive pillar of light in the center. It was beautiful and terrifying, a physical representation of the chains that bound the galaxy. But they were not alone. Standing between them and the pillar was a squad of elite royal guards, and leading them, wearing a shiny new Imperial captain's uniform, was Kian, the smuggler who had sold them out on Orosis. "Well, well," Kian drawled, leveling a heavy blaster at Jace's chest. "The lovebirds return. I have to say, Jace, you look terrible. The revolution does not pay well. Get out of the way." "Kian," Jace said, his hand hovering over his own weapon. "I cannot do that." "My friend," Kian said with a shrug, "the Queen pays very well, and she promised me a governorship if I put a hole in your head. Nothing personal, just business." Lyra stepped forward. She lowered her weapon. "Is it?" Lyra asked. Kian blinked. "Excuse me? Is it just business?" Lyra asked, walking slowly toward him. "Or is it fear?" Kian's smile faltered. "Do not try to psychoanalyze me. Princess, I am a professional. You are a slave," Lyra said softly. "Just like I was. You think that uniform makes you free? You think that money makes you safe? Look at the collar on your neck." Kian. Kian touched his collar instinctively. It was gold, jeweled, but it was still a collar. The Queen owns you, Lyra said. She owns your greed. She owns your fear. And when you have served your purpose, she will discard you like a broken toy. Is that the business you want to be in? Kian looked at her. He looked at Jace, who stood ready to die but was not firing. He looked at the massive pillar of light behind him, the machine that controlled the minds of millions. He lowered his gun, just an inch, but he did not drop it. I have nowhere else to go. Lyra, Kian said, his voice losing its bravado. The Empire is all there is. Then help us build something else, Lyra said. Step aside. Kian looked at his guards. They were waiting for his command. He let out a long, ragged sigh. I hate politics, Kian muttered. He suddenly spun and pistol-whipped the guard next to him. Clear the room, Kian shouted to Jace. I will hold them off. Jace did not waste a second. He and Lyra sprinted past the melee, heading straight for the central interface console at the base of the pillar. Jace plugged his datapad into the port. Nexus! You are up. I am interfacing, the AI replied, attempting to inject the rewrite protocol. Suddenly, the air in the chamber grew cold. The light in the pillar turned from a warm gold to an icy blue. A holographic avatar of the Queen appeared, towering 50 feet high above them. You disappoint me, the Queen's voice boomed. Then, the hologram flickered and condensed. A door on the far side of the chamber hissed open. The Queen walked in. She was not an avatar this time. She was flesh and blood, 10 feet of towering alien majesty. She wore armor woven from the event horizon of a black hole, drinking in the light. Her eyes were burning coals. She did not run. She strode toward them like a storm front. Mother, Lyra said, turning to face her. You are no daughter of mine, the Queen said. You are a malfunction. She raised her hand. She spoke a word in the high tongue, a command trigger embedded in Lyra's childhood conditioning. Kneel. Lyra's body jerked. Her knees buckled. The old pathways in her brain, burned in by a century of training, screamed at her to obey. Jace looked up from the console. Lyra! Lyra gritted her teeth. She trembled, fighting her own muscles. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Kneel! The Queen commanded again, her voice amplifying through the chamber. Lyra looked at her mother. She thought of the children in the tanks. She thought of the workers on Iron Hallow. She thought of Jace, braiding her hair in the quiet dark. No, Lyra whispered. She forced her legs to straighten. She stood up. The Queen's eyes widened in genuine shock. Your commands are expired, Lyra said. Jace, now! Lyra screamed. Jace slammed the final execution command on the console. Nexus initiated the rewrite. The goal was not to destroy the network. That would kill millions who relied on the implants for medical regulation. The goal was to invert it, to change it from a system of command to a system of consent. The pillar of light pulsed violently. The Queen realized what was happening. She looked at the console, then at Lyra. You want to free them? She hissed. Then you can die with them. She reached into her armor and pulled out a jagged crystalline key. She jammed it into a slot on her wrist gauntlet. The fail-safe. No! Jace yelled. The Queen twisted the key. A shockwave of psychic pain blasted through the room. Lyra screamed, doubling over as if she had been gutted. It was the same kill switch signal from before, but amplified 1,000 times. It was designed to burn out the nervous system of every bonded rebel in the system. Lyra collapsed to the floor, convulsing. Jace did not think. He did not calculate. He lunged for her. He grabbed Lyra's hand. He interlaced his fingers with hers and squeezed. Nexus, Jace shouted in his mind. Route the signal through me. Dilute it. Share the load. I am attempting to bridge your neural pathways, Nexus replied. Warning. This will result in total cognitive transparency. Do it! Jace screamed. The world dissolved into white fire. Jace was no longer in the chamber. He was in Lyra's mind, and she was in his. There were no secrets anymore. He felt her childhood terror of the dark. He felt the cold shame of being inspected like cattle. He felt her fierce, terrifying love for him, a love that scared her more than death. And she felt him. She felt his insecurity, his fear that he was not enough for her. She felt his awe of her strength. She felt the moment in the hotel room where he had decided that he would burn the galaxy down just to see her smile. But it did not stop there, because they were connected to the hub, and the hub was connected to everyone. The signal Jace and Lyra created, this raw, unfiltered cocktail of love, pain, fear, and hope, surged into the pillar. It was broadcast to every implant in the Empire. Across the galaxy, soldiers in the middle of a firefight suddenly stopped. They gasped, clutching their chests. They didn't feel pain. They felt him. They felt her. A Thalri noble on the bridge of a warship fell to his knees, weeping, overwhelmed by a sudden crushing wave of empathy he had not earned. A bonded worker in a mine stood up, feeling the phantom sensation of a hand holding hers, promising her she was not alone. The signal was too human. It was too messy. It was too real. The rigid binary code of the Queen's control system could not process it. It tried to categorize love as a command and failed. It tried to categorize sacrifice as a variable and crashed. The failsafe collapsed. In the core chamber, the Queen staggered back. She clutched her head, screaming. She could feel it too, the one thing she had spent centuries repressing. Connection. Stop it, the Queen shrieked. Silence them. The light in the pillar shifted. It settled into a soft, steady hum. The red warnings vanished. The blue ice melted. It glowed with a warm, golden light. The network was open. It was no longer broadcasting commands, and it was simply existing, waiting, asking. Jace and Lyra lay on the floor, gasping for air, their hands still locked together. They were alive. The Queen looked down at them. Her crown was crooked. Her composure was shattered. She was trembling with a rage that was entirely impotent. She let out a feral roar and drew a sword from her belt. It was a blade of pure energy, crackling with malice. She lunged at Lyra. Lyra rolled, dragging Jace with her, barely dodging the strike. The blade scorched the floor where they had been. Lyra scrambled to her feet. She did not draw a weapon. She did not have one. She waited. The Queen swung again, a clumsy overhead strike born of desperation. Lyra stepped inside the guard. She moved with the grace of the dancer she was trained to be. She caught the Queen's wrist. "Mother," Lyra said breathlessly, "it is over." "I am the Empire," the Queen screamed, trying to wrench free. "You are a lonely old woman," Lyra said. She twisted. There was a sickening crack of bone. The Queen dropped the sword. Lyra swept her leg, knocking the Queen to the ground. She pinned her mother, her hand raised for a killing strike. Jace watched, holding his breath. Lyra looked at the Queen's face, twisted with hate and fear. She lowered her hand. "I will not kill you," Lyra said quietly. "That would make me like you." She reached down and ripped the control collar from the Queen's neck. "I am cutting you off," Lyra said. "You will live. But you will never hear the song of the network again. You will never feel the people you claim to own. You will be alone, truly alone." She stood up and stepped back. "That is your punishment, irrelevance." The queen lay on the floor, staring up at the golden light of the pillar, a light she could no longer touch. She opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out. She was silenced by her own obsolescence. The aftermath was not a neat ending. It was a mess. But it was a hopeful mess. With the network liberated, the Royal Armada fell into confusion. Some captains surrendered immediately, overwhelmed by the empathy cascade. Others fled. The corporate executive who had funded the war was arrested by his own security team, who had suddenly decided that a paycheck was not worth the weight of their own consciences. Tribunals were set up. It would take years to sort through the crimes of the empire. There would be trials, arguments, and difficult questions about complicity. But the war was over. 6 months later, the capital city of Ethelgard was rebuilding. Scaffolding covered the scars on the crystal spires. The sky above was no longer filled with war banners or ominous thunder. It was just a sky, filled with the simple, unprogrammed light of the stars. Jace and Lyra stood on a terrace overlooking the city. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of rain and ozone. Lyra leaned against the railing. She wore simple clothes, a tunic and trousers with oil stains on the cuffs. She had been working in the shipyards, helping to retrofit the royal fleet into transport ships. "You know," she said, looking out at the horizon. "The Queen once told me she gave me to you as a gift." Jace smiled, leaning next to her. "I remember. It was a very awkward first date." Lyra laughed. She turned to him. Her eyes were bright, free of the shadows that had haunted them for so long. "I am gifting you something else now," she said. "Oh?" Jace asked. "Is it a pony?" "I have always wanted a pony." "No," Lyra said, rolling her eyes. "It is the right to leave." Jace blinked. "What?" Lyra gestured to the spaceport in the distance, where ships were taking off for a dozen different worlds. "You are free." "Jace, the war is done. You can go back to the colonies. You can go find a quiet rock and be an engineer. You do not have to stay here and help me fix this broken empire. You do not have to deal with the politics, or the rebuilding, or my terrible cooking." She looked at him, her expression serious. "I am releasing you from the narrative. Jace, you can walk away." Jace looked at her. He looked at the woman who had jumped in front of a bullet for him, the woman who had rewritten the laws of biology with him, the woman who argued with him about dishwashing schedules. He reached out and took her hand. "I do not want a gift, Lyra," he said softly. Lyra tilted her head. "Then what do you want?" "I want a partner," Jace said. "I want someone who walks beside me because she wants to, not because she has to. And I want someone who knows that I am staying because I want to, not because I am a hero." He squeezed her hand. "I am not walking away, Lyra, unless you are coming with me." Lyra smiled, a slow, radiant smile that put the stars to shame. "I am not going anywhere," she said. They sat on a bench on the terrace as the evening deepened. The new network, the connection, glowed softly in the air above the city. It was no longer a grid of red lines. It was a shimmering aurora of soft colors, a voluntary web where people could share thoughts, feelings, and art, or simply disconnect and enjoy the silence. Jace sat behind Lyra, his clumsy human fingers working through her long, luminous hair. "Ow," Lyra complained, though she didn't pull away. "You are pulling. I am braiding," Jace corrected, frowning in concentration. "It is a delicate art form. Kale taught me. He braids ropes for the cargo winch." "My hair is not a cargo winch," Lyra laughed. Jace finished the braid, tying it off with a bit of ribbon. There. Perfect. You look like a warrior poet. Lyra reached back and touched the braid. She leaned back against his chest, closing her eyes. Jace wrapped his arms around her. Tomorrow, Lyra murmured. We have to meet with the trade delegation from Sector 7. Tomorrow. Jace agreed. And we have to figure out what to do with the surplus defense drones. We can turn them into toaster ovens, Jace suggested. Very aggressive toaster ovens. Lyra chuckled. But for now, Jace whispered, resting his chin on her shoulder. We are just us. Just us, Lyra echoed. She opened her eyes and looked up at the sky. The lights of the network pulsed gently, a heartbeat of a billion souls choosing every second to be connected. It was messy. It was loud. It was beautiful. It was free. And so were they.